Hello and welcome to the SciFirst MovieTalk episode. So in this episode I'll be discussing the 2017 crime mystery Murder on the Orient Express, as directed by Kenneth Branagh and as adapted from the 1934 novel of the same name by Agatha Christie. Set in 1934, we meet one Hercule Poirot, as played by Kenneth Branagh and directed by, who is possibly the world's greatest detective. No ego there then. We catch up with him exhausted and mentally drained after just finishing solving the case of a theft of an artifact from a church in Jerusalem. Poirot is looking for some well-earned rest and relaxation and being able to wrap himself up with some good Dickens. However, an urgent matter unexpectedly requires his attention in London and as a result ends up boarding the elegant and gilded Orient Express along with 13 other passengers and the train's crew. However, there is no rest for Poirot when, during the journey, the train is derailed following an avalanche, and indeed, more so, one of the passengers is murdered. It then becomes up to Poirot to solve the case before help arrives and gets back underway. Full of scandal, intrigue, twists and subterfuge, and where everybody is a suspect, every clue poses more questions than answers, making it apparent that there is much more to this case than meets the eye at first glance. It is going to take every ounce of Poirot's cunning, resolve, and his ability to see the cracks in what should be in order to bring the killer to justice. Just who does have the motive, the means, the opportunity to commit such an heinous crime? Now, wow. This is simply a striking movie, absolutely stunning in its elegance and set against such an indulgent backdrop, which not only serves to capture the majesty, the scale and the grandeur of the Orient Express, but also to the breathtaking journey that it takes as it kind of winds through snow-laden country and mountainsides. Now, that all does sound a little bit like a travelogue, for that said train service, and indeed I am in awe. It is certainly an aspiration to travel that route one day. I believe the service is finished now, but I think a private company now runs one, but nonetheless, it's the way that the film makes you feel that it's something that you could really need and want to aspire to. But set in the movie, it becomes a focal point, a spectacle, and most importantly, a most unique setting in which to investigate a crime. I do love a good murder mystery whodunit, and this one certainly held a lot of promise. And although this is a classic story, I did benefit from A, never having actually read the book, and B, as is pretty much always the case, but B, not being able to remember seeing any of the other adaptations of the story that have been released over the years. Now, I do know of Hercule Poirot, of course, and indeed the works of Agatha Christie, mostly from kind of the serials that I've seen on TV, but I would kind of struggle now to remember any of those exact plots. Only kind of Poirot's unique style, his presence, and crime-solving prowess. And that certainly excites and captivates regardless of the actual story, and for me, Branagh's version of the character is no exception. Branagh looks like he is completely in his element as the famous Belgian detective, a role he was almost born to play, and he fits the persona very well. You can almost see the contentment and in himself as he goes from scene to scene, as if he himself is the one who is piecing it all together. And I suppose, in some way, of course, as he's also directing the movie, he is, The love that he has for this character, the genre, and indeed kind of a good mystery at its core that kind of reveals itself in the energy and commitment that he gives to the character as an actor, and the overall kind of substance and infrastructure and intricacies of the crime, the investigation, and the reveal as a director. It's a beautifully presented and carefully crafted movie through and through, with an elegantly kind of classic feel set against that lavish backdrop, being precisely executed and kind of absolutely garnished with talent that play each of their roles with perfection. And indeed, the killer being the best act of all, toying with the great detective as they try and kind of throw him off the scent. It is heavy on Poirot, which does result in the rest of the cast kind of being subject to being support only, really. There are a lot of characters, the biggest of all being Poirot and his ego, that and Branagh's, which do seem to kind of hog the limelight somewhat. Plenty of the cast seem underused, for the most part because of that. But then there is a lot kind of going on, and indeed from the offset, the film makes no apologies for setting this as Poirot's story. You know, his investigation, his anguish, and his turmoil with with dealing with a kind of an outcome and a crime which goes against his very fabric of being and shakes his very strict and kind of balanced belief system. Branagh really does make you feel the toll this takes on Poirot. Either way, the entire ensemble of cast bring their respective characters to life in their own way, such that for those even with the smallest of screen time, they shine and they add to the fabric of this kind of very rich tapestry that we have. It's not a thriller. I wouldn't say that it was over-exhilarating. It goes at its own pace, and although it has a couple of more higher octane moments, shall we say, it flows at a constant pace in keeping with, Poirot's kind of more methodical and exacting style. This is about unravelling a crime and the impact this has on those involved, and indeed most certainly Poirot himself, which the film takes time to explore and feed on to kind of build the tension and the mystery it needed to captivate and hold our attention. What I would say is that, yes, the film does feel like a travelogue at times because of its extensive use of panoramas, sweeping scenes, and this kind of grandeur. I personally thought that it really did actually add to the movie's kind of enigmatic style, its resonance, and its atmosphere. But indeed, it didn't advance the plot. I've got to agree with that, The format of the movie and the crime itself lends itself very well to kind of Branagh's kind of style of direction. It fits very well with his more kind of cinematographic and often plain kind of somber way of storytelling, which in a very kind of enthused and intricate and elegant way. The film is shot as if it was a panorama, making every scene, if you like, feel like a grand entrance against a very sweeping statement. From an outside perspective, from somebody who wasn't around in the 1930s, the movie did seem to me to be kind of true to the time period as much as in which it was set, at least with its representation of the values and the prejudice of the time, yet managed to provide a kind of very modern balance, I thought, and attitude without compromising on the perceived authenticity, which I thought worked extremely well to cover the angles without shying away from the views and experiences many would have had around that time. Now, I'm not saying that this is 100% historically accurate. It's not a historical feature. I'm not qualified to comment in that department. What I am saying, from what I do understand of the period, it seemed plausible, at least enough to make it feel like it was the 1930s, whilst at the same time being very relatable to a modern audience. Let's just say that it provided a meaningful, deliberate and insightful social commentary applicable to both then and now. One of Branagh's longtime collaborators, Patrick Doyle, presents a very strong and captivating score in accompaniment to the on-screen kind of grandeur and with, some very kind of seductive and playful themes, orchestrating a score that is simply cinematic in itself and lending and feeding into the slowly building tensions within the movie as the case kind of takes a more personal and involved turn for Poirot. The notes echo this kind of indulgent nature of the movie and indeed Branagh's passion for the character. Overall, this was a very indulgent crime mystery, very much having the feeling of eating a kind of a good box of luxury chocolates. It's been filmed in such an extravagant way you could literally feel the silk sheets themselves and smell the fine aromas of the a la carte dining experience on that's Harry Potter, they're coming later, but on the majestic Orient Express. I found it to be a very well executed mystery with a fantastic cast and plenty of colourful, exuberant characters that, whilst taking a back step against the masterful, the precise and the exacting world famous detective Hercule Poirot, still bolstered and balanced the story with a very much kind of made this an event worth savouring. Indeed, Branagh gives it his all and simply looks in his element, and you certainly feel it both from his performance and his direction, which centres this classic tale of murder, lies and deceit into a beautifully crafted and presented mystery to relish. So, that brings me to the end of this episode. Many thanks for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe button for more movie reviews, trailer reactions, and other movie-related content. Absolutely loved having you here at SciFirst MovieTalk, and definitely love to have you back. Most of all, just thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.